Hello. Let me check a few things before I start. Yeah, the mic is looks fine. I'm gonna turn off the ticker. Um, all right. Things seem to be going well. Let me check that. Yep. All right. Um, so what I wanted to go over today are first of all the news. Since the last time I talked to you, I've seen my oncologist today, and so far the news are good. I was given a date of June 18th for the transplant procedure itself. It's possible it could happen earlier because hospitals have their own schedules and they, they decide in mysterious ways when they accept people for admission. Um, we went over the percentages of people who have my condition, people who have my condition and don't get stem cell transplant, people who have my condition and do get the stem cell transplant. Um, and my doctor reminded me that this is not standard of care yet for people with primary CNS lymphomas. They do the transplant because they think it's going to be the best outcome for me, but they don't have the statistics to prove it. And the reason they don't have the statistics to prove it is that we are only 1,500 people a year who get this kind of lymphoma. So we don't have the numbers yet to really demonstrate it. And I find the numbers to be of partial utility because, I throughout my chemo and throughout the treatment that they're giving me and every experience I have, they ask questions about, do you have this, do you have that, is this happening, is that happening, and every time my results are better than average. I mentioned it the last time. A lot of people, when they have any kind of, well, I wouldn't say any kind of chemo, but when they have their chemo, they lose their hair. I didn't lose my hair. I had a bit of a gastric problem, but it wasn't horrible. I vomited 3 times, maybe. And then they adjusted my antiemetic. So when they give me numbers like that, I, I listen, and it's serious. At the same time, I don't think that's necessarily going to determine. It's not going to determine my fate, basically. Um, so, I think I'm relatively young for somebody who's going to get a stem cell transplant. So I'm hopeful that everything's going to be all right. And also look at my condition itself. 30 years ago, a primary CNS lymphoma was a death sentence. You did not survive. They didn't know how to treat it. Uh, and then 10 years ago, well, I don't know exactly when, but about 10 years ago, the treatment I got for my chemo previously, the 8 rounds of chemo with methotrexate, um, that was experimental at that time, 10 years ago. That's not a long time ago. It was experimental, and I've watched some TED videos of people who've had what I have, and they had to give them chemo by putting something in the brain, and they were sending the chemo directly in the brain. In my case, the chemo was sent through a port. It was much nicer, but yeah. So I look at that also, like just the history of my disease. 30 years ago, this was deadly. Uh, I guess you were just getting it, and it was growing and growing in your brain, and then in someday, I mean, eventually, you would not be able to walk or to see or to talk, and then you were dead. Um, so I'm hopeful, and the doctors are also hopeful that it's going to help me uh, beat the odds. And I'm hopeful not only for myself, but for the future generations, the kids who unfortunately will probably have cancer someday. Not all of them, but some of them will get the cancer. And if I can pave the way in any way, shape, or form to make this all easier for them, I want to do it. And then, yeah, we signed the papers because, of course, you need to sign papers. And I noticed the University of Maryland Medical Center makes me sign much more papers than Johns Hopkins did. I don't know how it works, how they operate with the mentality, but every time I go do, I can do an e-check-in when I go to the website for my next appointment. I can do an e-check-in, and every time there's the same damn form that shows up, and I have to sign all over again. Like this doctor wants you your form, that doctor wants your form, and it's nonsense. So I signed the papers. Uh, yeah, and again there were whole lists of symptom, I mean possible side effects on there, uh, and I pretty much knew what to expect. I know I'm going to lose. They told me you're going to lose your hair. Both Johns Hopkins and UMMC told me you're going to lose your hair. End of story. Um, I would be very surprised if my hair resists the chemo. Though today I learned a little bit more about one of the drugs are going to take me where I'm going to have to take a lot of showers to get that poison out of off of my skin, because apparently we do excrete the poison when we transpire, and some people can end up with problems on their skin. So I'm going to have to shower. I kind of recall 4 times a day, but anyway, I'm going to have to shower more than usual. Um, and also, I got clearance from my doctor to try CBD for sleep, because I've been having sleeping problems for a long time. I've tried, the antihistamines and Benadryl and stuff like that. It does nothing to me. At worst, I'm going to feel a little bit sleepy if I take those things, but it doesn't do much. I've tried melatonin, nothing. I've tried what my wife takes. I don't remember what it is, but at some point we were on the same medicine. I didn't just take her medicine. You don't do that. But she was taking, I think, Ambien, and I tried it and it didn't do anything. I tried Lunesta and that worked. And at Johns Hopkins, excuse me a second, my nose is itchy. There you go. Blew my nose on camera. Yeah, Johns Hopkins was they didn't have Lunesta on their formulary, so they tried things. There was one drug called quetiapine, I think. It didn't do anything for me. Uh, Finally, at Johns Hopkins, we settled on Ativan, but I am of the opinion that I shouldn't be on Ativan for a long, long time. So that cannot be a permanent solution. No more than Xanax could be a permanent solution. Xanax was making me drowsy when I was taking it, but we don't want that forever. So then, so the Lunesta, I became resistant to it. Unfortunately, it went from having perfect nights to waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and then that was it. The night was over, and now we try trazodone. I think this is the name of the drug, and it doesn't work for me. And I was trying to find solutions, and I knew that how we already called this the drugs derived from cannabis could be helpful, and I don't want to get the high, so I'm going to try CBD, which is not going to give me a high, but may help with my sleep. Um, so I got clearance for doing that. Um, and I realized on the way back when we were on the highway, about halfway between the hospital and my house, and the hospital is 1 hour away from my house, I realized that I forgot to get the supplies for flushing my Hickman line. So Yeah, I did give them back a call. I don't know if I'm going to call back tonight from Linda, who's the coordinator. Um, I gave them a call. I still have supplies for 3 days, so it's Friday was the day that I'm going to be the first day without any supplies to flush my line. I may be able to find something over here. I looked on Amazon. I didn't find anything useful there. They have a bunch of syringes, but they're not filled with saline. And all the syringes that were given to me that were wrapped individually were filled with saline. So I need to have the saline syringes to flush my line. So I still have time to figure it out. Maybe tomorrow we're gonna call the local pharmacies and ask them if they have the syringes. I may need to buy more syringes than I need, but it's gonna be that. Uh, yeah, and today when I was preparing for the streaming, FedEx showed up and they decided to deliver the first box of smoke detectors, which were supposed to arrive yesterday, but FedEx is always late and not terribly intelligent, so they delivered it today. I was thinking there are two boxes coming here. I was thinking they were delaying one box to put it with the other box and then deliver it both at the same time, but that's not what they're doing. They're just delaying one box for no reason and delaying the other box for no reason either. Stupid FedEx. Um, all right. Yeah, so now we can get on the topic of rip. I'm forgetting where my mouse is. Yeah, mental health. Um, yeah, I had a heart attack at 24. So that heart attack caused after I had it, and they told me you had a heart attack, and I didn't know yet what was going on with me. I had a lot of anxiety at that time. So much so that I ended up having panic attacks where your body just responds to the attack, but there's nothing attacking you. It's not normally when you have an attack, like a dog attacks you, you want to run or you want to do something, and the body responds, and but it's responding to something. If you have a panic attack, the body is responding to nothing. So there's nothing you can do. That you cannot hide under the covers. You cannot hide under behind a couch. You're just standing there, and it's like. So I had panic attacks, and at that time they gave me the Xanax to control it. And I have to say, if you're if you have panic attacks and you don't know what they are, you should be diagnosed. But if a doctor offers you Xanax, take what you see on the internet with a big grain of salt, because there are some people who are just going to tell you that Xanax is going to cause you to become dependent on the drug, and you're not going to be able to live without it. You're going to go on the black market and buy it. I've never done that. I was 24 at the time. They gave me Xanax. I took it to quell the panic attacks, and after a while, they did more tests on me, and the rhythm of life reestablished itself, and the panic attacks subsided by themselves, and I stopped taking Xanax. And I've not been on the black market trying to buy Xanax or become dependent on it. Uh, my impression, and I'm not a doctor. That's just an impression. Is that some people they want to numb their senses or something. Xanax may be available to them for whatever reason. I don't know if they lie to their doctors or if they get it from someone else who has it. I don't know how it works. But those people are going to be probably attracted to it, and there are probably some personalities that are, you know, you would say addiction prone. Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know if that's the case, but my mother, for instance, was alcoholic, and I don't know if they had given her Xanax, maybe she would have abused it. I have no idea because she didn't take Xanax. Uh, so so my problem is when I don't know what's going on with my body. And then the period that I had the heart attack, and before they examined me and they did the catheterization and they said there was no damage, and then just the reestablishment of life in that time period, I didn't know what was going on with my body, and that gave rise to a lot of anxiety. Uh, then the anxiety subsided, and then at 48, I was diagnosed. Well, at first, I was diagnosed with MS, which is it's a whole nother ball game, as they say. Um, I was diagnosed with MS, and then I wanted a second opinion, so I went to Johns Hopkins. So on June 5th, I was diagnosed with MS, and I think it's on August 5th I got a second opinion, and it said it's not MS. We don't know what it is. Um, so I didn't have a at that point. I believed the second doctor that I saw, which I thought was much more cogent than the first doctor. Um, and it's like I was living with something that was happening in my head, but we didn't know what it was, and it was causing symptoms. I had. I'm not going to go over the whole list, but at the end, just before my biopsy, I was not walking without a walker, and I couldn't see. Uh, I, I was seeing double, and I had blurriness. Um, but there were symptoms all along the way between August 5th and November 17th. There were symptoms that were coming and going. And since we didn't know what was going on with me, that gave rise to more anxiety. And I was put on Xanax again. And I think that was a good decision to put me on Xanax, because I was having, again, panic attacks because I didn't know what was going on and I didn't have a plan of attack. And then, I mean, I don't remember what the timeline was exactly, but they put me on buspirone. And buspirone is a drug that takes care of anxiety specifically. So now I'm not taking the Xanax anymore. And I have a bottle of Xanax here with pills in it. And, it's not like I don't feel the pull of the Xanax. Again, I want to make sure that people understand that taking Xanax is not a death sentence or a sentence to be a drug addict. You take it while you need it, and then you don't take it anymore. While we're talking about mental health, I should also mention that the lymphoma experience has been hard, not only on me, but also on my wife. And I would have liked her to be here and be able to tell you herself how she feels, but she's not into streaming at all. And yeah, so it had an impact on her also. And after the fact, after we were back home and we were sitting and she could talk to someone, and I'm that someone who listens to her, she was telling me that for one thing, she witnessed me when I was speaking in gibberish at the hospital. She witnessed that. And I thought what I was saying made sense, but all the words that were coming out were wrong. Like wait the car because the doctor said that it will improve the liposuction or something like that. It was ridiculous. So she had a hard time, and she tends to be a little shy, and I would have been more direct than she was, but she was keeping things inside, and when I was back from the hospital for a while, we hit a rough patch where we were both rather hyper, and we were kind of feeding on each other's energy, and we were rough with each other. I wouldn't say no. We were not beating each other, but the quick retort or something like that. And I can't say. I mean, after a while, she talked to me, I talked to her, and we explained each other's position. Uh, and I don't know where I was going with that. Um, and now it's going better. Um, it's been going better for a while, but it's gone better where she could, relax and talk to me, and we've worked things out. So yeah, if you need mental health, my advice to anybody who has something serious happen in their life, uh, it can be health, it can be anything else. Excuse me. It's to get help. And in my case, it was a little bit difficult to get help because, first of all, there was a pandemic going on, and I'll have more to say about the pandemic later. But there was a pandemic going on, and then everybody wanted to get the psychologist, so the a lot of the local places were full of patients, and then they didn't have any more capacity. So I called here and I called there, and oh, we take only these kinds of patients or that kind of patient. I would never fit. Eventually, I found a local place where they were accepting me, and I got there a psychologist and a psychiatrist that was helpful. The psychologist I no longer see because he decided I was just doing too well. After a while, while we were not sure what was going on, I needed him, but now I'm okay. Um, I'm still seeing the psychiatrist because I take some drugs that require prescriptions, prescription renewals. Um, but I also tried to get help from Johns Hopkins, and I was turned around because, and I don't know if it has changed, but at that time they only took patients from Baltimore County. And I was turned around from UMMC because they only take Medicare patients. And I have to say, I've had a good experience with Johns Hopkins. Medically speaking, there are some things that were not great. Um, I have a good experience right now with UMMC, but I find in both cases the lack of mental support for their patients to be lacking. I will give you an example. I had a cardiologist here locally, and I've seen him since I've been here. So I've seen him for 5 years. Um, and in all those years, we're doing a little thing and tests and this and that and prescription changes, but nothing major. He put me on ezetimibe. I don't know if I'm going to stay on ezetimibe, but he put me on ezetimibe. Um, then I went to Johns Hopkins, and at Johns Hopkins, I saw the lipid specialist, and the lipid specialist immediately said we should put you on PCSK9 inhibitor. And he filed the paperwork, and there was one refusal from my insurance company at first, and then he filed more paperwork, and they accepted. It turns out that my cardiologist here, through a clerical mistake, got wind of the file that I had at Johns Hopkins with the PCSK9 inhibitor. And when I went to his office, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've seen that. I've seen you're gonna get the PCSK9 inhibitor." And every time I've tried to do that, it was so much paperwork. Like, that's not what I want to hear from my doctor. So I fired the cardiologist here, and now I'm working with a cardiologist at Johns Hopkins and my lipid specialist at Johns Hopkins. But this is a physical problem, and just for that physical problem, going to Johns Hopkins made all the difference because there was a guy there who knew what he was doing. And right now, I mean, the the local folks at the local psychiatry office, they're helpful. Not all, they're helpful, but they're not always helpful. And I'm wondering whether that I could go to a place where they have a better doctor, and then I would get better services, maybe better drugs and maybe better sleeping medicine and all of that stuff. So, um, Yeah, I'm not a fan of the way Johns Hopkins and UMMC operate when it comes to mental health. And today the doctor was saying, well, maybe it's this office or that office. Like, but how are we supposed to manage that? We're patients. Well, this office at UMMC accepts this insurance, but that office only accepts patients that are on Medicare. But and this other office accepts only patients that are on that other insurance. Like, it's crazy. Uh, and yet that's how it is. So yeah, yeah. I was saying earlier. I think I got a little bit away from it. It's like, yeah, when something happens in your life, and when you feel down, you should try. And I know it's hard, and it's been hard for me, and it's been hard for other people also that I know. It's hard to get mental health, but do please seek it. We have people online. They come to the Discord, various Discord servers on which I'm active, and sometimes, like, they start getting on a slippery slope, and I have to remind them to seek mental help, because it does work. And sometimes you will encounter people that will say, "No, it doesn't work. I've tried it. It doesn't work." It does work, and for some people, it does work, and it may take a while before it works, but it does work. Um, so I encourage everyone, who listens, and feels down, that they should uh, get mental help. Uh, if you're in the same country I am, the United States is not the best place to get mental health, but you can do it. And I said earlier, that I put the pandemic on the ice, but now I'm going to bring it back into the discussion. The pandemic has been hard, and I cannot say, I have to say this. I cannot say that the pandemic caused my lymphoma. Sometimes people look for a cause, and I don't think we're gonna ever gonna find a cause of my lymphoma. But somebody might say, well, maybe you wash your hands too much, or some other nonsense. I don't think the pandemic caused it, because I started having vision problems before the pandemic. I remember going to see my ophthalmologist, my retina specialist. Actually, it was a retina specialist and not just an ophthalmologist. Ophthalmologist is kind of more general than retina specialist. I saw the retina specialist, and I remember the first few times I went there, we were not wearing masks or anything. We were just all together in the waiting room, and that was it. And then as the pandemic progressed, they started imposing more rules, um, so that we wouldn't catch COVID-19. Um, and that plays into the mental health aspect, because first of all, for a lot of the visits I had to do, my wife could not accompany me. So when I went to chemo, she would drop me off, and I would go to chemo, and 4 days later she would come and get me back home. Uh, and the car started having trouble, so I looked into that, and it was a little bit before I was diagnosed with lymphoma that she completed. I shopped for a new car, and she completed the buying of the car by herself. And overall, all that, there's another thing, is that our society, and I don't want to say it's wrong, but sometimes it can become bad. Our society puts the guys in charge of protecting the women. So I wanted to protect my wife from the virus. And there's also another factor in our case, special to our case, is that my wife is 20 years older than I am. And so right off the bat, she was in the at risk groups. and I wanted to protect her from that. And you get to the fact that I'm the man, she's the woman, and I should protect her. So um, when I had my attack on June 5th, that was at the forefront of my mind. It's like, how am I going to protect my wife if I cannot even protect myself? And it all snowballed from there. And I think it played into the anxiety. It's like, well, first of all, prior to that, I did go to see my retina specialist, but I was staying away from the healthcare system as much as possible because I didn't want to bring anything back home. Um, but after that, the floodgates opened, and I just went. I had all kinds of problems, and I went to the ER and so on and so forth. Um, but I don't remember where I was going with that. um, yeah, I wanted to protect her, not bring anything back home. And I had set up our home so that we were pretty much, I wouldn't say independent because you always depend on someone. But instead of going to the store and getting groceries from the department store, we were getting all groceries delivered to our house. And it just happened that Walmart had just put together a service, and I just jumped on that, and it's been that way ever since. Um, so I've set things up so that my wife wouldn't have to go anywhere, and if there was any kind of delivery that needed, not delivery, but because the delivery man can come over here, there's no problem. But if there was something to be picked up, I was the guy doing it. I didn't want my wife to be exposed. And so when I got the lymphoma, or before the lymphoma, when they were trying to figure out what was going on with me, that had a big impact. The notion that we're supposed to protect. Uh, well, if we're a guy, we're supposed to protect our wife or girlfriend. I don't care. Um, that had a big impact on me and on the anxiety that I felt. Um, Let me see. What? Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a few minutes. If anybody's there, and I don't know if anybody's watching live, uh, are there any questions? I don't see any questions, so I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is religion. Um, yeah, let's go back to my religious upbringing. I was born in Montreal, and my parents were non-practicing Roman Catholics, and as is often the case for people of my generations, my grandparents were practicing Catholics. They were going to the church every Sunday or most Sundays. My parents were non-practicing, but they were still Catholic in name. And I was also, like my parents, practicing and non-practicing. I mean, for a while, and Catholic in name. Um, and then at some point, I grew up and I started asking questions like, the theodicy question: if God is all good, why do we suffer? And the priest had no good answer for that. I don't remember what his answer was, but it just didn't jive with me. And the problem of the Odyssey, I'm not bringing it up to diss on the Catholics. It's just that it's one of those problems to which we don't have a good answer. But the priest was trying to come up with something that would satisfy me, and it didn't satisfy me. And there were other things like, my grandmother remarried. So the whole story about, well, when you die, you're going to go into heaven and you're going to be with the ones you love. my paternal grandmother remarried. So who is she going to be with? My biological grandfather, who died when I was 5, or with her second husband, who died I was born in my teens? There were questions like that. Like the priests didn't have any particularly good answer to that. And so after being raised a Catholic, and I have did my first communion, and I think I did my confirmation. I'm not sure. Um, at some point in my teens, I thought, no, it just doesn't work. Um, so, and in school in Quebec at that time, it probably has changed, but at that time, we had the choice between a religion class and another class, which it's hard to, excuse me, it's hard to kind of narrow it down to what it would be in English, but it was a class that was exploring social themes and stuff like that. And I decided to not take the religion class. I decided to take the other class, um, which didn't prevent my school to have a monk and a priest teach the classes that were not religion. Like you cannot escape it. But yeah, I selected that other class because religion was just like, no, this is not for me. And then what happened is that I got into engineering school, and at my school, the way things were set up was well. Before I get to that, there's another thing I should tell you. It's like during my teens, I was not religious at all, and I was pretty cynical. But there's one day, and I was walking back home, and it's hard to explain what happened and why it happened and how it happened. But I was just walking back home, and it's like I just released my grasp on the world, for lack of a better term, and it's like everything clicked into place. Like for a moment, and I'm not saying that I started walking and then I was yay, but just for a moment everything clicked into place, and I was at peace, and I didn't have my heart attack then, so I didn't need, no, it was not like the peace of somebody who had a heart attack and it has a revelation, and it was just totally random. um and I even wrote a poem when I arrived home, and I don't remember if I still have that poem somewhere. Probably I do. It's probably in a box somewhere. uh, so so then after that I went to college, and in college I was in engineering school, but the engineering school was under a regular college, and they had an arrangement with the college that the engineering students could go to the regular library of the college, and maybe there was a reciprocal agreement. I don't know how it worked, because I was just an engineering student, so I don't know how it worked. But the engineering students could go to the library of the regular college and borrow any books. And I remember uh, quite a few times when I went, the librarians were not used to having engineering students come and pick up books at their library, and they were opening up their rule books like, you say you can, oh yeah, it says there you can borrow books. They were a bit confused. uh yeah, and I started borrowing books on Buddhism, and then what I read in there kind of uh jibed. I think it's jibed, not jive. I don't remember. It jibed with what happened when I was a teenager. It's like I was reading, oh yeah, that's, it sounds like what I experienced. And then uh, I joined multiple groups. I joined groups of people who were practicing in Montreal. I joined online groups, And it is through the online group that I met my wife. Um, and by the time I met my wife, I already had my heart attack. Um, no, I don't remember where I was going with that. Yeah. So at that time, um, so I practice Zen Buddhism, and uh, I would say the main approach that I use, I wouldn't say we use because some people use other approaches, and some schools of Zen are very eclectic, where oh, you want to use a mantra, go ahead. Uh, and some other are not very eclectic at all. It says you want to use a mantra, go to the go next door. It varies by place. Um, but my approach is more like meditation first and foremost. It's practice, and it's meditation on the unformed. And all of what I'm saying right, meditation on the unformed, it sounds mysterious and probably like gibberish to a lot of people, uh but it does make sense. um So yeah, I was so then so I met the various groups. I practiced for a while, and then I had a heart attack. I already was in the groups. I remember some people from the mailing list online, they sent me a card and everything in support when I had my heart attack. And then I met my wife. Um and it helped to have those people on your side. It helps to have anybody on your side when you're in a serious health situation. But that helped. I wouldn't say that having the heart attack transformed me into this superb human being. I'm still angry sometimes, uh, although you don't see it because I keep laughing. But um, yeah, so sometimes I'm not proud of myself. But it's been actually a good preparation for the lymphoma, and the lymphoma I consider it to be more serious than the heart attack. The heart attack, it came and went, and they said there was no lasting damage. I still have to live with the high cholesterol, but now I'm taking a PCSK9 inhibitor. I'm hoping the numbers are going to be better the next time they test my cholesterol. But I more or less consider that to be under control. Um, Whereas the lymphoma is not yet under control and may never be under control. We don't know yet. But with the lymphoma and their religion, the punch in the face that you get when you get a lymphoma is that you're not in control of your life, and I'm not in control of my life. And I think a lot of people are going to agree with that point at the bottom line. We're not in control of our lives. We don't know when we're going to die. I could die tomorrow. I could die in 10 years. I could die in 20 years. It's unknowable. Um, and concomitant with the fact that we don't have control of our lives, the aspect of surrendering, and I don't know what you surrender to. I'm not sure. I'm not going to tell you what to surrender to. And if you want to surrender to Vishnu or Shiva, or because they have surrendering rendition traditions, they have surrendering traditions in those religions, a little bit less than in Christianity, I think. But if you want to surrender to somebody or something, you have to be careful though when you surrender to somebody, because sometimes that somebody may not have your best interest at heart. But you know, I I have a better appreciation now for those traditions of surrendering than I did before, because it's the unknown. I tend and what I've been exploring lately in my practice is surrendering to the unknown, and I don't know where it's going to take me. a lot of the time, uh, in Zen practice, we don't know. We don't know what's coming. Uh, and sometimes, so I tell people, if people ask me, I tell them I practice, and I don't go proselytizing. I don't go try to convert anybody. If you find that Buddhism is nonsense, hell, I wish you the best. I don't care. Um, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I keep losing my track tonight. So yeah, when people ask me, yeah, I was saying I do not proselytize. I don't go after people and say, well, you have to believe what I believe. Even my wife, and she's a Buddhist also. But you um, if she doesn't want to sit, she doesn't sit. That's it. Uh, so, but people sometimes know about my religion and they ask, um, about karma or about rebirth, and I have to be totally honest with them and tell them that I do not believe in the traditional stories that lie around that. Like, for instance, rebirth. I'm going to die and I'm going to be reborn as a cow, or I'm going to be reborn as a rabbit, or I'm going to be reborn as a cat. I think there is I think there is rebirth, but rebirth is not it's not this kind of line going from A to B to C, then you can follow it. And concomitant to that, I don't believe in karma also. I believe it I believe in it more in a psychological sense, that if you do bad things, then you're going to create suffering for yourself. But and I cannot explain it, and that's the problem of the Odyssey. You know, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, karma is because they did something bad in a previous life. But that doesn't satisfy me, primarily because I don't believe in rebirth in the classical sense. Um, so I don't believe in karma either. I believe you can cause yourself harm with thoughts that are impure. But then again, no proselytizing. I don't go after people telling them think pure thoughts because your life is going to be better. It's more complicated than that. It's always more complicated. Sorry. Um, and it cannot be pinned down. If you try to pin everything down, you're going to drive yourself crazy. So when people ask me, I'm very gassy tonight. Sorry. Uh, when people ask me, what is your practice, and how, I pray. What do you do? And sometimes it's just, you listen to the sound of the wind in the trees. You listen to the cicadas. Um, I think I'm learning how to live by listening to the cicadas. And it's not only Brood X, the regular cicadas that come year after year, they're just as good. Or you listen to the frog. Or you listen, if you're in a busy environment, you listen to the people in the waiting room. And if you really listen, it becomes an orchestra. And I'm not being like, it's not going to turn into the whatever symphony by Bach or whatever. But it touches you, and that's the best way I can put it. It touches you and it transforms you, um, and then you become less of an ass. uh, So yeah, that's what I wanted to say about religion. I mean, I think religion is helpful, but it's no panacea. And every time when I bring topic up, sometimes I say every time, and sometimes I would say more sometimes than every time. But sometimes when I bring the topic up, some people have strong objections, um, and those objections are based on their own religion often, and often here it's Christianity. Sometimes it's Islam, and I don't want people to move away from their religion, but there are traditions which, unfortunately, in Christianity and Islam, have been quashed by the establishment. So in Islam, for instance, there's Sufism, and when I read, I've not read very often the writings of Sufist um, thinkers. I'm not sure that's the right word, but um, I've not read them very often. But the times that I've read them, there are things I recognize in there, and like Allah is unknowable, which the people in power don't like, because they want Allah to be on their side, so they want to know Allah and they want to then use it, to to control other people. And it's the same thing in Christianity, that they want to God is on our side. And you can find the same thing in Buddhism, actually. But the problem that what happened in Buddhism is that this approach, or this kind of trying to put things into a box, like you know the Dharmata is trying to tell you something, or it didn't work so well in Buddhism, at least in Zen Buddhism, certainly. Um, so the point I'm trying to make is not Buddhism is better than other religions, but if there's anything you heard me say that you like, I invite you to look into your own tradition. I had to switch traditions to be able to find what I needed, but you don't have to. Um, you don't have to switch to traditions if you don't want to, because there are people in every tradition that have uh, meditated on the unknown and accessed it. Um, Oh, and one thing I wanted to say, I should probably have said that earlier, uh, is that what I'm saying right now is not nonsense. What I'm saying is based on empirical fact. I mean, when I say that some traditions in Buddhism or in Hinduism or in Islam or in Judaism or whatever Christianity have been emphasized or oppressed, it's a historical perspective, because I was a student in religion. My PhD is in religion. So this is all stuff that we learned when we were doing the PhD. And there were things even in my own tradition that, you know, I think it was Yampolsky, the I think the name of the author, and he showed that the sixth patriarch was of Zen was probably not recognized as a patriarch from the get-go, but that one of his students, to improve the chances of his lineage being held up, then he propped up the sixth patriarch. Um, and that's not what we learn when we're in the school in Zen. What we learn this that the sixth patriarch was recognized as a patriarch, without any problem right off the bat. There was no problem. They just looked at him and, yeah, sixth patriarch. Well, not exactly like that, but almost. But no, Yampolsky, I think is the name. Still, he did research and he found things that, you have chronological problems. You have the guy who was elected, who was pushed as the sixth patriarch, had didn't leave many writings. And so it's, when whatever I say, I don't say just to diss other religions. It's happened in my religion also, and I don't think it makes it worse for wear. Um, I think it makes it better actually, because the way we operate, if you meditate on the unformed, you don't need you need a tradition in the sense that you need to have somebody to guide you, face to face, moment to moment. But you don't need what happened 300 years ago, 600 years ago. It's kind of irrelevant. You could demonstrate to me by A plus B that one of the ancestors in this religion and in my tradition was not the student of this other guy, but was the student of some guy that is not recognized by my tradition. It's like, what do I care? um, it's interesting from a historical standpoint, but from a practice standpoint, it's besides the point, because of the sound of the wind in the trees. Um, it's there. You cannot deny it. It's there. I don't care how, if my teacher can help me and guide me, great. I don't care how that came about, really. Uh, so, yeah, that's it for the religious aspect, I think. So, let's see. Are there any questions? I don't think there are questions. This is a pretty quiet time. Yeah, my next stream, I don't know when it's gonna happen yet, but do I have a topic for you for my next stream? I'm going to talk about cancer, chemo, and sex. Yes, you heard it right, sex. When I told that to my wife, she was, "Are you crazy?" Yeah, we're gonna talk about sex. So, well, I wish you well, and thank you for listening.